HaLashon. We are currently in the gate of Torah. We are in gate number 5. And today we will discuss the great obligation to strengthen those who learn Torah and how great is the reward for supporting those people. Very timely, considering the fact that those who purport to learn the Torah are looking to completely decimate the Israeli government in order to receive an exemption. But let's see what the Chafetz Chaim has to say, and we will go from there. Okay, so it says we have talked previously about the greatness of Torah, and it's really the number one most important aspect of Shmiras mitzvahs, because the person who establishes the value of Torah also sets a foundation that's immovable. And it's not just for those people who clearly are very involved in day-to-day activities, but it's nonetheless important to be very aware and very much on the front lines of how important it is to stay on top of this and not become contrite or lazy about how bad the punishment can be for not fulfilling or for nullifying your time for learning Torah. And we learned this in the Rabbeinu Yonah in the Igeres HaTshuva, which we mentioned in the previous chapter, but we'll talk more specifically about becoming lazy. So Rabbeinu Yonah says that one who is looking to be lazy and they are trying to save themselves from the punishment, the bitter punishment, and the great sin of bittul Torah, of wasting time from Torah. So what they should do is to address themselves to the needs of the students and their teachers, and that in order that they should continue to exist in their city, and they should engage in Torah because of that. Now, we had said in the previous chapter that a person who themselves wants to sit and learn, no matter how wealthy they are, they can go ahead and drop everything and sit and learn Torah. So the obligation to support Torah learning falls on those who are not learning Torah, and not on those who wish to learn Torah. And the rabbis of the Talmud explain in the Sifri. The verse says, this is a verse in Mishlei, it's in 3:18, it says that Torah is a tree of life to those who hold on to it. Those are the people who learn it, but not those who actually are strengthening it. What does it mean for them to be strengthening it? Those are the people who support students and their teachers. So even those people who themselves, they learn a little bit and they keep the mitzvos, nice yidden, right? They also have an obligation to help support the Torah. Because if it's not for that, then they would be considered part of the people who contribute to the curse. And what's the curse? So Rabbeinu Yonah mentions this curse. He mentions it again in his Shara Tshuva. And he quotes the Sifri. It says that the Pasuk says in the Varim, it says that it's in 27:26, at the end of the Torah, it says, "Cursed is the one who does not fulfill the words of this very Torah." So who is this cursed person? A person who learns, and he repeats his learning, and he teaches other people, and he keeps the Torah, and he has the ability to strengthen all those who engage in Torah and mitzvos, and he does not do it. This person is considered someone who does not help keep the Torah going. Okay, so you can't be selfish about it. You have to make sure everybody has access to it. So therefore, you should see how incredible is the value of one who strengthens Torah learning and adds value to every wise person, and especially from their own contributions, and brings themselves closer to it. Because the verses themselves of the Torah testify to this, that you're as if you are one who clings closely to God's presence. And the Gemara says the following. It's the Gemara in Ksubas 1:11. It says, the pasuk says, this is in Deuteronomy 4:4, All those who have clinged to Hashem are alive today. So how do you cling to Hashem? How do you cling to God's presence? There's nothing to cling to. It's not. There's nothing to cling to. So it says that, especially when the Torah itself testifies in that very same section, that Hashem himself is like an all-consuming fire. You can't cling to that, right? It's not a physical thing. So this works in the following way: someone who marries their daughter to a great Torah scholar, okay, or you engage in business practices for a Torah scholar, and you benefit the Torah scholar from your own money. Therefore, the Torah considers that as if you have clung to the Shekhinah, as if you had brought yourself as close as possible to God's presence. And this is repeated in the Gemara in Brachos 10b, that anyone who allows a Talmid Chacham to stay in their home and benefits him from his wares, then the Torah considers it as if he has brought the continual offering in the temple. And it says further in the Gemara in Brachos, this is on 63b, that Rabbi Nechemiah used to say when he was honoring his hosts, and he would say the following. One verse says, this is from Shmuel Aleph 15:6, that Shaul said to the Keni who hosted him, right, you have done so much wonderful things for me and all the Jewish people, okay? Because the Keni was also Chovav's family. They've had a good relationship with them for centuries at that point. So if Yisro, who was the one who did nice stuff for Moshe Rabbeinu and brought him into the house and gave him a daughter, so too anyone who brings any Torah scholar into their home and hosts them and feeds them and benefits them from what he has, how much the more so. And further it says by Rabbi Eliezer, when he would bless his hosts, he quoted another verse in Shmuel. This is in Shmuel Beis. This is in chapter 6:12. It says, "Bless Hashem the house of Oved Edom." Why? Because Oved Edom housed the Ark of the Covenant, the Aron Elohim. So here you are housing the Ark itself, which neither eats or sleeps or drinks, right? You simply honor it by its presence being there. How much the more so a scholar himself, and you feed them and you give them something to drink and you benefit from them, how much more significant is that reward? The Midrash Rabbah continues the following way, that Rabbi Meir used to write he himself was an expert scribe. They call him a kasavan, and it's not a sofer. And he would go ahead and every single week he would write 300, and he earned he earned 3 selah a week. So 3 selah is basically equivalent of like $3, okay? And he would eat from one part, he would buy clothes of the second part, and he would give the last part to the scholars in the neighborhood. And it says further, now that's an act of absolute piety. That's not trying to say that that's what you need to do. It says further in the Midrash Rabbah of Shir HaShirim that it says in the book of Song of Songs in chapter 6 verse 11 that they would go down to the almond grove. Why would they do that? So Yeshua ben Levi explained that the Jewish people are compared to the almond, and it's just looks like the almond is covered in a shell, and then it has to be peeled open, and it's sealed for its benefit. So too, that we are covered in hair and fingernails, and these things are clipped and removed, and so therefore everything that we engage in for our benefit and give to people who continue to pursue Torah learning in this world, what they should see is that there is a great reward hidden for them in the next world. Excuse me. Okay? And we also say that one is considered a friend for those for whom he learns, because this is part of the benefit of his of the learning of his Torah, because the Gemara says in Sota on 21a that Shimon, the brother of Azariah, that they talk about how Yisachar and Zvulun had an interesting relationship, that Yisachar would do the Torah learning and Zvulun would do the business side to keep them in their learning. And this is also repeated in Midrash Rabbah in Vayikra as well. And it says Rav Huna and Rav Yirmiyah would quote Rabbi Chia bar Abba in the following way: that the Holy One, blessed be He, in the future times, that there would be a great shadow to cover up those people who are supporters of mitzvos, which means they would strengthen the people who engage in Torah learning and keep those people next to those who learn Torah all the time, and they would be sitting with each other in Gan Eden, and they would have 3 verses applied to them. The first verse comes from Koheles, from the book of Ecclesiastes 7:12, that you shall sit and dwell in the shade of wisdom, and you also shall dwell in the shade of riches. The second verse comes from Isaiah, from Yeshayahu 56:2, that a person should, praise with the person that should do this and should support these endeavors. And so too, the verse of that the Torah is a tree of life for those who hold fast to it. And continued, Shimon, the brother of Azariah, would say the following, and this was in the first chapter of Zevachim in the Mishnah. So why would they call Shimon the brother of Azariah? He was the greater scholar than him. Azariah was a businessman and supported his brother, and so therefore he got his name said, quoted with every single halacha that was said by his brother. Just like we say too, by Zvulun. And in fact, it says that Zvulun should be happy because Yisachar dwells in his tents of learning. And this comes from the book of Deuteronomy, Dvarim 33:18. So even though Yisachar had more learning than Zvulun, the fact that Zvulun would go and leave the country and engage in business practices and earn money for him, and take care of Yisachar or his brother tribe, that they are the scholars of Yisachar. Therefore, the verse or the statement is made for how much joy they enjoyed. That Zvulun was happy with going out like that. And so too, in this world, there's nobody who will lack anything when they are trying to put their efforts towards supporting Torah learning. It says further that the verse says in Mishlei 6:23 that the mitzvah is a candle for you to see, and the Torah is the light upon that candle. So what does it mean that the mitzvah is itself the candle? So if you do a mitzvah, explains the Midrash, so it's as if you lit a candle before the Holy One, blessed be He. And it makes somebody feel better when they get the benefit from the light of the candle. Okay? And that candle is also compared to a person, because it says also further in Mishlei in chapter 20, verse 27, that the candle of Hashem is the soul of the person. Okay? And therefore the Torah being the light of it, is that when you have a person who wants to do a mitzvah, but their evil inclination tries to drag them away from doing it, so it says, how can you do the mitzvah and you're wasting all this money? So then what happens is that you should really focus on giving to other people, like we've said many times. And that's what the good inclination a person would say, is that give things towards a mitzvah. That's not a waste. Okay, and that's why the mitzvah is a candle and the Torah is its light. So just like the candle, when it's lit, no matter how many candles are lit from it, its light is still very strong. And so too, anybody who does a mitzvah, he's not losing from himself, but is extending his light to others. Okay. It further asks in the Zohar, why does Zvulun always get mentioned before Yisachar? So Yisachar is the Torah learner, so you should mention that first. Okay, and he says that Zvulun gets to go first because he took from his own business practices and gave to Yisachar. Okay, and that's why he also gets to go first in the blessing, because you need more blessing. The blessing is the idea of increase and doubling over. And so therefore, we learn that one who supports Torah scholars, the blessings benefit them and come directly to them. Okay, and therefore you're benefiting from the idea of what's known as two tables. You have the table of riches and the table of Torah, and that's the idea of moving forward with that. So the Chafetz Chaim makes a little footnote over here. Here's a couple of footnotes. So in this footnote here, he says the following. So just like we see that the Holy One, blessed be He, gave a certain amount of blessing to the tribe of Levi and warned the Jewish people to not let the Levi become destitute. And it's even a verse. It says it in Devarim 12:19. Be careful not to let the Levi become destitute. Make sure you take care of him. And that's what Hashem wants, that you should strengthen the people who are putting themselves aside from engaging in the regular things in this world, and you need them to focus on the spiritual things. The Rambam himself says this in the laws of Shemitah and Yovel in chapter 13. He says, why was it that Levi wasn't given an actual portion of land in the land of Israel? And he also wasn't given any share in the conquests. And the reason why is because the goal of the Levi was to focus on serving Hashem and to teach the laws to the Jewish people and distribute justice and righteousness amongst them. Because it says again in Devarim in 33:12 that the Levi should teach all of the laws to Yaakov, to Jacob, and all of the Torah to Israel. And so he was set aside from everything else in the world. He doesn't go out to war like everybody else, and he doesn't inherit things, and he doesn't keep things for himself. Okay, he has to be part of the army for Hashem, or the servicemen for Hashem, because it says that Hashem will bless their legions, the legions of people learning Torah. Okay, and it says further that the Kohen and Levi, it says in Bamidbar 18:20, I am your portion, I am your inheritance. Not only Shevet Levi, the Rambam continues, but any person from the entire world who dedicates themselves to become part of the people who focus their intent completely on serving Hashem and to know Hashem and to walk in His ways, which is the way in which Hashem intended him to be made, and they do not get enveloped in the many involvements of the regular people, and they set themselves aside to do the most holiest services. And Hashem will be their inheritance, and that will be how they will be treated forever and ever. And therefore, all they will earn in this world is what they need to continue doing that practice. And therefore, you see by King David, he says that Hashem set out what I needed in my life. You set me firm with what I have earned. Okay? And that is the language of the Rambam. Okay? And included in strengthening the learning of the scholars, you also need to marry your daughter to a scholar. And we mentioned that from Ksubos 111. And that's like holding close to the Shekhinah as close as you can. This is also repeated in the Gemara Pesachim in 49a, that a person should sell everything they have in order to marry their daughter to a scholar. Okay? And why should, and also, I'm sorry, that they should sell whatever they own and they themselves marry the daughter of a scholar, or to marry their daughter to a scholar. The Hebrew can be confusing sometimes. Because should that person not be there, they can trust that their children will also be Talmidei Chachamim. And in our days, because of our great many sins and all the different places where the Torah's value has been cast into the dirt, and those who learn Torah become driven and shaken around, and you can't even gather them up into a little group to meet together. And sometimes it's easier to make a decent marriage between a regular guy and a regular girl, instead of finding somebody someone who is a Torah learner. And this is really unfortunate, because when you do this, you actually weaken Torah. And God forbid that when you don't see people who keep the Torah strong, it becomes weak. And also, it's a tremendous loss for the Torah that the people who learn it and are very intent on it and focus their actions on it, they are not able to collect enough value for their home. And woe to the embarrassment suffered by those people who have to live like this. Okay, the Torah learners are not given a place to stay in these communities. And so you have to ask yourself that when you come back in front of the Holy One, blessed be He, and you say, when He asks you, what are we going to do with the great loss of Torah? The Zohar says that the following happens, that he quotes the verse in Malachi 3:19. Here comes a day that burns like the fire of an oven. And that is the day of great judgment, in which Moshe Rabbeinu himself comes back and says, look at the great loss of Torah that you had. And we see that the great Rabbi Yohanan in his book Yaros Tavash complained about this significantly. Is he quoting Yaros Tavash? Let's see. No, he does not quote him. And so, and this is all comes as trappings of the Yates. I thought this next statement was actually a quote, but he doesn't say it's a quote. And so he traps them and convinces them to do the following: don't have your daughter achieve success, or you'll see that. Don't believe that she won't be successful or reach higher levels of status if she marries a Torah scholar. And however you married her to some other guy, right? The truth is that that's not how it should work, because the Holy One, blessed be He, who is the master of the entire world, and He sets everybody out in the amount of sustenance that they deserve. Okay, because as we see, it says in Tehillim 136:25, He gives the sustenance to all people. If He says you aren't supposed to have enough food to eat, God forbid, because you learn Torah, but unless you fulfill the mitzvah, that makes no sense. It's terrible to think such a thing. Instead, it's the other thing. We don't talk about that, and we don't talk about those that they never actually sat and learned Torah at all, and they don't make an effort to learn Torah, and they don't want to get married to people who teach Torah. And since they haven't really had a flavor of what that looks like, they don't recognize how sweet it is. And they don't understand how amazing it is to have these people in their lives. And especially people who are regular homeowners and don't have exposure to what that looks like. They don't expose themselves to people who learn Torah all the time and see its value. And so instead, they become lazy with it. And so that's why we have such a disaster of people who aren't supporting enough Torah learning and who want to marry with a bunch of Torah scholars. This is a different problem in his time period, where that was a problem. Torah scholars couldn't find good matches. So back to the end statement of the chapter over here, that how much should one put the effort in all of his strength to stay as close to the Torah scholars as he possibly can, even if it means sacrificing much of your stuff. Okay? And they say in the Gemara in Pesachim, we say, sell everything. And in our very days, there's even greater demand on that. If one goes ahead and matches themselves with Torah scholars, either their personal self or their daughter, then you'll see just how valuable and how much value will be born from supporting these Torah scholars and people who fulfill the mitzvos. So don't do the opposite. So who knows what will become of things in the future, what the descendants will look like, because we see ourselves that even though we commit great and many sins in these times, whoever is the more wealthy finds it more difficult to save themselves from the different strategies used by the Yetzer Hara. And therefore, you have to see to it to bring yourself closer to Torah. And it says, because we say in the Gemara in Sota, that the Torah says the Torah is Magaina Umatzala, right? That the Torah is a shield and a protection. And that, boys and girls, is the end of our chapter. We'll make some statements about some of the issues facing Israel in a further video later today. Thank you for joining. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe, invite your friends to subscribe, and share with your friends and have them subscribe. Bring the light of Torah to everybody. Have a great day.